We work particularly on questions of labor, on sexuality. We work with a whole range of political and social movements. So in a way, we see ourselves as kind of activist-y lawyers. But we've also been involved in all kinds of cultural politics. So my own work, for example, lies at the intersection in a way between law and culture and technology. So we've been involved with campaigns against censorship, in which we've been both the lawyers, but also been responsible for organizing various kinds of film festivals in the city. We're currently doing a big case in Delhi, which is about photocopying and access to textbooks. Because like a lot of you know, a lot of the social sciences and humanities textbooks are extremely expensive. I mean, I had a copy of Bourdieu's Distinction today, which would easily cost in India around 4,000 rupees, which is approximately 6,500, 7,000 yen, which is of course a very, very high cost for a single book in India. So we're currently doing a case on, which has been filed by the biggest academic publishers that all of you know, Oxford, Cambridge, Rutledge, Francis and Taylor, against a small photocopying shop. So this is both a legal campaign, but also a kind of a social campaign along with it. There are two archives that I'm closely, the first chain has been pulled. There are two archives that I've been closely working with, and one of the co-initiatives of. One is called Padma, PAD.MA, which is the Public Access Digital Media Archive. And the idea behind Padma was to create an open access video platform which will have dense annotations of video. And the idea was to work with how do you convert surplus, especially of digital surplus, into something which has historic value. We're working with documentary filmmakers who now shoot in insane ratios. So if earlier, because film was so expensive, you shot within a certain ratio, 1:20 or 1:25, with digital, people just shoot without any sense of ratio, and they make a 40-minute film or a 1-hour film. And we were interested in how do you convert all of that extra surplus in terms of footage into something valuable. And this is the idea of working with annotation, and annotation as a textual interface with kind of surplus video to create an online repository of footage. And anyone can upload, anyone can use the platform. An offshoot of that project is something that we started called IndianCine.ma. And this actually began with Ashish's Encyclopedia of Indian Cinema, which we took and put entirely online, and decided to create, in a way, an online archive of Indian cinema, but primarily for film scholars and researchers. So you can annotate by timeline, and you can have multiple annotations, which is exactly what you need in terms of the interpretation of cinema. You need competing kind of interpretations of film. You can link it with textual material, you can link it with audio material and with archival material. So this is something that we started. We're currently focusing on out-of-copyright films. In India, the copyright term for cinema, for films is 60 years. So anything before 1954 is available to us. And the 50s is the golden period of Indian cinema. So in some ways, over the next 5 or 6 years, what we will have is the entire golden period of Indian cinema available in the archive. You can watch the films online, but it's not really a viewing tool, because what we're really looking at the archive as is, again, infrastructure for thinking about, online kind of film scholarship. It's, I think, one of the, without any modesty, the leading kind of digital humanities experiments right now in the world. So we collaborate with 2 excellent film scholar coders in Berlin, very rare combination to actually have the 2 in one place. And this is something that we're very happy with right now. I ask all of you to explore it. There are 1,000 kind of functionalities that each of the 2 websites have. You can search across the entire database. You can take clips that you'd like to create a playlist of different clips from different films, if you want to do a comparison. So a whole bunch of things that you can do. So this is kind of a quick background of the kind of stuff that I've been interested in. But I wanted to use this as a transition to thinking about the relationship between creativity, piracy, and infrastructure. Because a lot of what I have been doing in terms of even work like this has really been at the cusp of trying to look at what limits the law places on cultural practice in a time when technology seems to race ahead in terms of possibilities, right? So this idea of the lag between the two is something that I've always been interested in.
Yeah. Can I summarize
Sure.
what you talk? Because I think that maybe I should I don't want to translate everything, but just quick なんかちょっとサマリーだけ。要するに今バックグラウンドずっと話していて、多分多くの人大体分かったと思うんですけど、一応確認だけしておくと、なんかいろいろやっていて、基本的には法律事務所があるんですよ。で法律事務所があって、でもそれは同時にパブリックスペースとして機能していて、いろんな人が集まるようになっていると。でそういうパブリックスペースとしてやりたいことっていうのは、特にクリミナルジャスティスっていう、なんていうかな、政治的なその犯罪に巻き込まれたときに、どういうふうに対応していった、法的に対応していったらいいのか。で例えばインドの場合、非常にそのお金もかかるその裁判するので、そういうなんかお金がかかるような裁判に対して、あるいはアクセスがそういうなんか支援に対するアクセスがない人に対してどういうふうに提供するかっていうのが一つ大きなことをやってます。で同時にその、文化的な活動をいくつかやっていて、例えばその聞いて面白いなと思ったのは、そのでもインドではその本がすごい高いテキスト文化、これ中の本なんか7000円ぐらい高いので、そういう人たちに対してどういうふうにして自由にそのテキストブックにアクセスできるようにするのかっていうのを、ラウドルとかスノースポーとかに対してキャンペーンを貼ったりしてるっていう、そういう運動も文化的になります。で2つぐらいはプロジェクトをやっていて、1つはその、いろんな映像をどんどんなんかアーカイブしていって作ったもののなんかサープラスっていうやつで、なんかその作って余ったっていうことですね。
一つはパドマっていうインフラストラクチャーで、もう一つが
もう一つはその映画で、2つ目は映画、インドの映画で、著作権が60年で切れてしまうので、1945年以前のものは自由に上げることができるから、それを中心に今扱ってるんだけども、50年代は実はインドっていうのはすごく映画がゴールデンエイジなので、50年代のやつがこれから10年ぐらいで結構いろいろ扱えるようになるだろうっていう、それすごい楽しみで、それは基本的にやっぱアカデミックな研究者のインフラストラクチャーとしてみんなが使えるようにして、そこにはそのいろんなその批評だとか研究というのをリンクしていろいろ使えるようにするっていうようなことが、それまではとにかく今自分がやってることのバックグラウンドです。でこれから話すことっていうのはその、パイラシーとか海賊ですね、パイレーツの問題とクリエイティビティと、あとなんだか忘れちゃったけど、とにかくこうしたバックグラウンドをもとにこれ今考えていることやろうとしていることがあると。
So in a way, the last 10 years, one of the defining features of debates around the culture industry and debates about creativity has really been centered around the ownership of knowledge and culture and of technology. And the question of who owns culture has been the fault line and the dividing line in a way of a number of kind of key battles. So what we have been really interested in is how the question which used to be framed in terms of censorship, etc., is being kind of framed by the question of ownership. And this has been crucial for us because in the last 10 years, what we've also seen is the rise of an alternative in terms of the entire open source movement, the open content movement, the Creative Commons, and everything else. All of these serve as important alternative kind of paradigms, and they articulate an alternative normative language of ownership of knowledge and culture. But there's still a problem. And the problem is that in the mainstream discourse around, let's say, the copyleft movement, there is an embarrassment about the question of piracy, right? And this is an embarrassment at many levels. There is an argument, for example, that the reason why the copyleft movement is important is because it has or enables creativity, and there is no creativity in piracy. Piracy is a commercial act. It doesn't involve any creative transformation, and it's just merely the reproduction, mechanical reproduction for commercial reasons. So that was really the background to our own exploration of the question of the relationship between creativity and infrastructure. And I'm going to use the music industry and the technology kind of history in India more generally as an example of how one can tell a different story. So, do you want to?
いや要するに今考えているのはその知識のその所有という問題をどう考えるかっていうのが一番大きな問題で、その所有問題と考えることによって多分検閲だとか、これまで持ってきたようないろんな問題をもう一回再フレーム化していきたいんだと。特にその、パイラシーって海賊行為っていうのはこの中でも非常に重要というか、難しい問題で、というのはコピーレフトっていう運動があるわけですね。コピーライトの著作権に対応するようになって、コピーレフトの運動をするときはそれはクリエイティビティに通じてればいいんだっていう話ができるんだけども、パイラシーの場合は単になんかそう商業的な目的で勝手に商業物を複製してるだけなので、それは別にクリエイティビティと直接関係がないように見えるわけですね。だからすごくその問題を見てきてなんかやっていきたい。
This is some images from a project that we ran in Bangalore called the World Information City, which tried to look at the relationship between urban experience and urban form and the layering in a way of the creative economy on it, particularly given Bangalore's status as the IT kind of capital of India. But we were using different kinds of form in different public spaces to pose what we thought were the fundamental questions around ownership of knowledge and control of culture. But this is just a kind of a quick visual background that I want to give you before coming to the key part.
今ずっとやってるバンガロールでやってるこのコピーライトのなんかキャンペーンの一環でパブリックスペースみたいなのをやってるんですけど、バンガロールってもあんまりピンとこないと思うんですけど、インド最大の IT 基地なんですよ。インドで一番 IT が発達しているところで、そういうバックグラウンドあると多分面白いと思う。
So I'm going to tell you the story via the help of a graphic novel, a small graphic novel that some colleagues of ours on the research project had created. This is a graphic novel called Tinker Solder Tap. And it begins with, as you can see, a relatively vast blank space. And what the comic really does is it, between the first panel, which is this page, to the last, it shows you the transformation of urban experience over the last 20 years in India, where old infrastructure and old kind of, the lived kind of public spaces has been completely transformed with the adding of a media dimension. So, do you want to, or should I just continue? All right.
空き地がすごいあって、でなんかそのなんだっけ、金管総じゃなんとかっていうような事例があって、で都市経験っていうのがここ数年ですごく変わっていて、そこにメディアはどういうふうにこういろんなものを都市経験に加えているのかっていう。
What you have here is the image in a way of a very typical informal colony. A lot of Indian cities, there is a tension between the planned and the unplanned aspect of the city because of migration from the rural areas, a large number of which consists of people who've been displaced by development projects, large dams, mines, factories, etc., where rural land has been acquired and people move to the cities. There is no official kind of rehabilitation for them. So they end up first living on the streets, over a period of time creating in a way an informal settlement. The informal settlement then over a period of time negotiates and really establishes their legal claim and the right to the city. But this relationship between the formal and the informal, the legal, the illegal, is something which is a given. It's an accepted part in a way of Indian urban life. This, for example, is a visual representation of the emergence of a colony. Right? So you can see the movement from a kind of a relatively unstructured rural shanty over a period of time giving way into a kind of a semi-settled or a semi-formal settlement. They're also the basis in a way of political mobilization because of the fact that you engage with local level politics through your strength as an electoral kind of a class. And so this movement in a way from illegality to legality is something that I term as porous legality. Rather than looking at them as binaries of legal and illegal, how do we look at the porosity that allows the movement between different kinds or different layers of legality.
要するに移動してるか移住してくる都市に移住してくるっていうような話をしてるんですけども、要するにいろんな状況があって、例えばその鉱山がなくなったりとか、いろんな形で都市にいろんな人が入ってくるんですね。で最初の頃はとにかくイリーガルに入ってくると非合法に入ってくるわけだから、街に適当に住んだりするわけだけども、それがだんだん定着してくると、それがリーガルな土地になってある共同体ができたりすると。で要するに合法的に住んでるか非合法で住んでるかってそんなにきちんと分かるものではなくて、ある段階でいろんなレイヤーの中でそのイリーガルなものからリーガルに変わっていくようなプロセスというのは途中に進んだ。
So, if you were to transplant this story into the story of the information era and about the battles over culture, and move away then from the binary of legal, illegal to try to understand what's actually happening, we get a very different picture. Let me tell the story via a story of three kinds of, publics. The first one that I'm defining as the national modern, right? So in some ways, if you look at the idea of the national modern, it's something that all of you are also familiar with. It's the project of nation building in which modernity becomes the kind of ultimate aim or objective. The state plays the role of being, the transformative agent that will bring people up to speed in terms of a certain idea of inhabiting, the status of being the modern citizen, right? And in a lot of the ideas of the national modern, their relationship to technology is a monumental one. So it's always about large-scale projects. It's about kind of grand investments by the state into the transformative kind of possibilities of modernity. Typical in India, of course, is the kind of the post-colonial project of the invention of modern India through the participation by the state in direct kind of economic transformation, state ownership of large industries, best exemplified by dams. 43 million people have been displaced in India in the last 60 years by large dam projects. This is an image of an actress called Nargis who acted in a film called Mother India. She subsequently became a politician, and she exemplifies in a way the idea that one must sacrifice for the sake of the nation. And the sacrifice, of course, is borne by a very small percentage of people, by a large percentage of people, but who never in a way are the beneficiaries of national modernity itself. So that's the first kind of the national modern. The second kind of modernity that we see currently is, of course, global modernity. This is the story of Bangalore. This is the story of India having caught up with the West, in which a certain kind of a reconfiguration of temporal spatial imagination is taking place. Bangalore becomes a city of call centers. It's about the city that works 24 hours by 7 in time with the US. By a happy coincidence, India has an exact 12-hour time difference from the US. So when they sleep, we work, and when we work, they sleep. This kind of the cycle that goes on, in a way producing the 24-hour day, of which Bangalore becomes the back office of the world. This is the emergence, in a way, of a certain idea of a confidence, because if the national modern was articulated on the idea of a lack, it was always about catching up with the West, that somehow we're not modern enough. Somehow we missed, we missed the boat of industrial modernity. How do we catch up, right? So there was always this account of a certain idea of not being on the same time frame. Now you have another idea of time that emerges in the contemporary, where contemporaneity is really synchronous or synonymous in a way with global capitalism's use of information, with its use of information infrastructures, right? So the internet allows, in a way, for a transformation of forms of labor, forms of production, in which there is a production of this idea of contemporaneity.
2つのモダンっていうのを言っていて、一つはネーションモダンとグローバルモダンというふうに分けていて、ネーションモダンの方は非常にモニュメンタルで、非常に巨大なそのインフラストラクチャーとかを、ダムのようなそういうインフラストラクチャーをそういう政府がお金を出してバーンと作っていって、そういうふうな形でこれ効果を作っていく。でグローバルモダンっていうのは、今ちょっと挙げていたようにバンガロールみたいな形 て、でバンガロールの今そのグローバルモダンの状態っていうのは、24時間、1週間毎日ずっとアメリカに直接つながっているような状態で、そうしたその人が起きているようなのが今グローバルモダンで、何が違うかっていうと、そのネーションモダンの時は何かこう欠落してるっていうか、自分たちはその大きな西側のフレームワークの中に追いついていかなきゃいけないというなんかそのラックっていうか欠落がすごい問題だったのが、今はそうじゃなくて全く同じなんかリアルタイムで同時に起きてるっていうのが面白いです。
But lying between these two stories is the story that we were interested in. And that really is the story, again, of the informality that lies between the realm of the national model and the realm of the global model, right? And so even outside, for example, a mall that you see here, which is the Forum Mall in Bangalore, just outside the mall you will find a large number of informal traders who are selling pirated books, who are selling pirated DVDs, who are also selling corn, who are selling snacks in the evening. So this kind of the coexistence of these two realms opens out interesting ways of thinking about what's happening. On the one hand, the dominant account in the law is always about criminalizing them. So this is an ad for State Bank for an ATM card, which basically says Lallan ex pickpocket, Babu ex pickpocket, which basically means that once you move into a plastic card and you don't carry money with you, then pickpockets don't have jobs anymore, and then they enter, in a way, the informal economy, right? So there is, in a way, an automatic criminalizing and an automatic assumption of criminality between informal labor and, and petty crime. So this kind of specter of illegality has always hung over the informal economy.
でとにかくでも面白いのは、それはナショナルとグローバルのっていうのは完全にこう二項対立になるんじゃなくて、そこには必ず間っていうのは存在していて、例えばグローバルシティの外に行ってもストリートではなんかいろいろ海賊版が売られたりとか、なんかいろいろご飯とか売られたりとかしてるっていうのがすごい面白いっていうのが一つと、で同時にその間には何かそのある種の非合法的というか、ある種の犯罪的なものっていうのが常に存在していて、例えば今こうクレジットカードの広告を見ると、そこのクレジットカードの背後にはなんていうかスリというか、そういうものが存在しているようなのがあって、ある種の、一応の小さな犯罪なんだけども、クレジットカードを持つというある種のグローバル的な行為の背後に、そうしたクリミナリティっていうのが常にこうなんかある種存在するようなことだなという気が。
And it's no coincidence that they choose particular kinds of trades, because if you look, for example, outside the mall, it's precisely the local snack seller along with the pirated bookseller. So these two kind of Indias and their coexistence is a picture that was taken by a photographer friend actually from her own apartment, which kind of succinctly captures it. The swimming pool on one side and women on the other side carrying or looking for buckets of water. Is in a way the background to what we were interested in. Because what we have seen emerging in the last 10 to 15 years is a very interesting dynamic. If the national modern left most people outside its imagination, or if in a way violently displaced people as a result of its imagination, you see the global modern doing exactly the same on different planes, the creation of an elite class who can participate in the global economy, even as a large number of people are excluded from it. But in the last 10 to 15 years, there is what we have been describing as the emergence of an electronic everyday, or the emergence of what my friend Ravi Sundaram describes as the pirate modern, or the recycled modern. This is something that you see in almost every city and every town in India. The local mobile phone repair person, the photocopying service, the pirated DVD store, all of this has added in a way a layer of a recycling economy and a recycling of information and culture into the domain of everyday life in India.
でナショナルモダンっていうのは、多くの人たちの想像力を外に置いてしまって、要するにそれを発達するときにそこに外側に想像力を共有できない人を持ってきたのと同じように、グローバルモダンっていうのもやはり同じようにある種の人を排除するっていうふうなことは言える。でも面白いのは、グローバルモダンを考えるときに、単にそれだけじゃなくて、同時になんかパイレートモダンのようなものが外側に生まれてきていて、例えばその公的な経済の外側に、例えば海賊版を売って生活をしているような人が日常的に入り込んでくるっ 言葉って面白くて、それは一種のリサイクルのなんかモダンというか、
モデル、
まあ、
リサイクルとモデル。
リサイクルのモデル、そうリサイクルされたなんかモデルというか、そういうものが入り込んでいた。
And this is a story that Japan has a large role to play in, because a lot of the recycling begins in a way with the electronic revolution in Japan. So you will find, for example, in a number of shops in India, in terms of the pirate markets, a whole range of DVD players or VCD players, which earlier used to be VCRs, which don't have a label, don't have a brand, but you can choose your brand. So you can choose whether you want a Sony, you want a Toshiba, and then they will stick on whatever brand that they want onto it. And I'll come to a deeper connection in a way between the transformation via the East Asian kind of economy, starting with Japan, to what happens,